Hello, everyone. Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. Let's chat about not overwhelming yourself. So here's the thing. Like I was mentioning earlier about the cloth wipes, and the thing is that if you're not to that point because you have plenty enough other stuff on your plate, don't worry about it. Just keep that as aside, just to know that, okay, here is my option in case I need to go this route, in case I need to fall back on cloth or even terry cloth wipes or a bidet or a squirt bottle or whatever it is to clean myself. I say when you're able to make time, use those moments to try something new, to learn how to make something from scratch or whatever, but at least have the books, the videos saved, books especially, something in written form, whether it be notes that you took yourself off of my own video since I don't have a book out, or recipes that you saved where I've put them in a printable form, or at least in a form where you can copy and paste into your own document and print it off. Having these things, at least the knowledge, at least and the ability to be able to do those things. A lot of times when I'm talking about this stuff, that's what I mean. At least know that you have the ability to do these things when the time comes. Because if you try to take on, oh, I'm going to make my own mascara, I'm going to make my own soap, I'm going to make my own deodorant, I'm going to make my own tooth powder, I'm going to bake my own bread and make my own spaghetti sauce and make my own vinegar and wine, and the list is endless. If you try to take all this stuff on all at once, what's going to happen is you're going to quickly reach burnout. Well, first of all, you're going to get so overwhelmed that then you're going to quickly reach burnout. And then you're just going to kind of come to a standstill. Same thing goes when you're thinking about, well, I would like to start growing my own food. Now, you got people out there that will say, well, I grow everything that we eat. Well, I really have a hard time believing that there's really anyone out there that grows everything they eat. Everything. I mean, everything. Meat, eggs, milk, grains, herbs, vegetables, fruits, sugar, salt, baking powder. Are all these people growing everything? Are they being absolutely honest? And the problem I have with, and I'm sure there's people out there that consume far more of their own, what they have got from their own farm than we do. Because, other than chickens, we don't have farm animals. We don't have dairy animals. So I'm dependent on buying dairy from somewhere else. We don't have bees, so I don't have a way of producing a sugar substance unless I grow sugar beets, which I was going to do one year, but you got to make sure they're the non-GMO organic ones. And I had the seeds from Baker Creek. Then I was going to plant them. I was looking forward to it. Then I got a letter from them saying that the seeds have been tested to find they had been cross-pollinated with genetically modified sugar beets. It's almost impossible now to get sugar beets that are not genetically modified because of all the cross-pollination. So I'm like, okay, fine. I just kind of gave up on that idea. But I'm personally not ready, though I would like to have bees someday. I am personally not ready for that kind of commitment yet. I'm not. And I'm not going to let myself feel guilty about it because I have enough on my plate. You have to know your limits. Exactly. Like, I don't want to grind my own grains. Right. And with me, Debbie, I have a grain mill and I grind the grains. When I first got it, this was before I started YouTube. And I was really enjoying using it as my arm workout for the day. But if you're doing it by hand, it takes a very, very long time. So when Patrick hooked up that motor several years ago, he rebuilt this motor and he hooked it up. That's what I use because I don't have time to do it by hand. I still like grinding my own grains, but that's not the only thing I use. I still use also organic, unbleached white flour that I get from Azure Standard because not everything I make do we like it 100% whole grains because it does tend to make breads and certain things heavier or have a harder time holding together. So there's a lot of things that are also going to be a matter of taste. Not everybody likes sourdough. I mean, we like sourdough on occasion, but it's not always our favorite kind of bread to have. Sometimes we like the more standard dry yeast based bread. And I can whip it up a lot faster than I can some sourdough. Make sure you have things to trade. We are interdependent. Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is why a while back I put out a video on bartering and learning how to barter. Kind of learn what the value of your things are and your time is worth. Because a lot of people just don't even know where to begin, but it's not that hard. So it's like the chickens. I posted a picture of Guinevere. I finally got a somewhat decent picture of her, but you couldn't really see her poofy feathers in the back because the way she was sitting, they were kind of flattened against her head. But the thing is, her mom is a mixed breed. Her dad is a mixed breed. Her mom is solid black. Her dad is the one with all the colors in him, Antonio. And I said that they were gifted to me. Well, that's not entirely true. But those chickens, including Antonio and a few of my other chickens, were a barter. I traded this person some skin cream, some beef bacon that I had bought in bulk from Painted Hills. What else? A generator to make, a certain precious metal liquid. And one of my roosters from my first hatching. She wanted that rooster, so we traded straight across for a hen. And I was like, yes. And that's where I got one of the golden comets. And then she gave me a second one. And that was where I gave her a package of the Painted Hills beef bacon in exchange so she could try it out and see if she liked it. So this was all trade. This was all barter. We worked at it. We were both quite happy with how it all worked out. Learning these kind of things, figuring out what is the value of the things you have. And it's going to be dependent on what's the value going to be worth to them of what you have and what is the value of what they have to you. And you guys can figure these things out. I was starting to talk about gardening. So I know we'd kind of been doing some, like one of the first things we really got into growing as far as food goes. I mean, we already had the apple tree. It was established when we got here, but it was really young and it took years before it really started putting out apples. But Patrick had built a greenhouse, mostly so I could grow tomatoes. Then I kept growing the tomatoes. Every now and then I tried growing a little bit of other stuff. Most of it was tomatoes. That was my big thing, tomatoes. Because I use tomatoes all year round for making sauces. Pizza sauce, lasagna sauce, ravioli sauce, spaghetti sauce, barbecue sauce, and then or adding to soups and whatnot, chili. So tomatoes are super important to me. Then in like 2010, I think it was. I keep thinking it was more like 2012, but maybe it was 2010. When I was listening to that old video that Patrick and I did in 2017, I said 2010 in there, so I'm thinking, okay, maybe that is when I started. We decided it was time to really get more serious about gardening. And so I just started doing a whole bunch of stuff at once. But I even just with that, and not even as much as I'm doing now, but even with I was trying to do then, I felt a little overwhelmed. So some things that didn't do well, I just didn't worry about it. I focused on the things that were doing well and didn't worry about the rest. I didn't even try, Patrick's saying, oh, you should try saving some of these seeds. I was like, I'm not messing with that this year. That's another thing I'm not ready to take on yet. And not that saving seeds is hard, but I figured I was going to have to do a little practice and learning about it, like what's the best way to save this seed, that seed, or whatever. And so the seed saving was something I put off until later, and it was okay. And every year I learn a little bit of something new, and that's how it should be. You cannot compare yourself to either someone who was born and raised doing this kind of stuff. They were born into this lifestyle, into a home where they had farm animals and they had gardens and they made everything from scratch. And even then, there's always something new to learn. And so you have those people, and you can't compare yourself to those people or those YouTubers that maybe 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago decided to start learning this stuff, maybe even 5 years ago. And they've been practicing and doing these things, but they're still only showing you what they do. Maybe they're not showing you the things they don't do that maybe you already do. So you just don't want to ever compare yourself to someone else. Don't compare yourself to me, because I'm sure there's quite a number of people in this chat right now or watching this later that will comment that are doing things that I'm not doing. Maybe they already have the dairy animals and or the other types of farm animals other than chickens, or they have more chickens than we do. They're already keeping bees. They have a much bigger garden, or they live in a place where they can grow all of their own grains, which we couldn't do that right here. I'm not even sure how well a lot of grains would do in our area. It's not common to see grains growing around this part of Washington. Now, if you go to the other side of Washington state, yeah, oh yeah, people are growing wheat and all kinds of stuff. That's common over there, but not here. So that's the other thing too, is there's always going to be those things that just aren't going to work in your area. So again, it comes down to, stocking up on what you can, but also trying to figure out how to make do if it comes down to it. What if you can't get those grains that you commonly use to make your breads? What if you can't get them? Well, start having a plan put in place of what you would do. What would be your alternative? Can you grow some kind of seeds that you can grind up and use those for bread? A lot of people can grow some kind of seed. And then when it comes to the skills, so it was a couple of live shows ago, I was talking about learning skills. And I don't recall if I stressed this in that particular show, that don't feel that you have to tackle every skill either. Pick something that you think is most important for you to learn. Something you think that's going to be most beneficial to, to be able to, let's say you want to learn how to knit or sew or crochet. Now, these will be, especially sewing. I'm going to say sewing should probably be at the top for that, because there's a lot of things that you can, if you have some basic sewing skills, whether it be on a machine or hand sewing, there's a lot of repair work you can do to clothes that you already have. And then from there, it's like, okay, then maybe I'll learn how to make other things like either crocheting or knitting or both, so I can make hats and gloves and socks and leg warmers and things that keep us warm in the winter, or sweaters, blankets. And not only would that be good things for you and your family, but this would also give you something that you can barter with for somebody else. Maybe like I've done in the past, there was a lady I used to barter for her alpaca and wool yarn that she spun herself, because she had her own animals, and I would crochet her something that she wanted. And she was on the other side of the states, and we would do a trade. I'd get this beautiful yarn in exchange for something I made by hand for her, because she wasn't really doing that kind of stuff. I think maybe she was, but maybe she didn't have the same kind of know how to do all the same kind of things. I can't remember. It was a long time ago, but it was pretty cool. It's always great when I can use my skill to make something for someone and trade that for something I can't produce myself. But again, you want to start with what is going to be most important to you. Maybe the most important thing is learning how to take, if you don't have dairy animals, then learning how to take whatever kind of nut or seed that you can grow and turn that into a dairy product replacement, such as, because that's easy to do, making, hemp seed milk, which I didn't care for. I didn't care for the pumpkin seed milk either. Almond milk is good, but I love my own blends that I've created, such as Brazil nut and hazelnut, which we can't grow Brazil nuts, but I think we might be able to get almonds or hazelnuts to grow out here. Filberts, I think so. Maybe. I love cashew pecan milk, and I especially love it because when I strain it out, I get that pulp, and that the way the pulp is because of the cashews is it has a far more creamy texture than like the one from the Brazil and hazelnut milk. And I can take that pulp and make a dairy replacement cheese. I mean, I eat dairy. I'm not vegan, but it's nice to know I can do that if I can't get my hands on dairy products because I have all these nuts stored up. So just some more examples. Now let me read a couple more comments. I am very new to most of all of this. I want to try too much. And I get that. I'm trying to narrow down like you are suggesting. I have difficulty with that. I get that because there's this push to try to do it all, especially if you're feeling stressed, because maybe you're looking at the state of the world and you're like, I got to learn all this now. But the problem is if you allow yourself to get that stressed out about it, you may not really get anywhere. You just kind of come to a standstill because when you get overwhelmed, you'll just want to throw up your hands and just quit. Not like you can't take a break and say, okay, I'm going to back off and I'm going to kind of reboot a little bit. And now I'm going to start with this one thing. Let me figure this out. Like with the tomato seeds and the planting the tomato seeds and the way I grew them, that was all trial and error because I was determined to do it without the use of electricity. I didn't want to have to use added light, a grow light or added heat, like some people use like a heating pad. And I didn't want to depend on that in the event that what if I don't have the power, what if the whole grid is down and I don't have the power I need to give them that kind of heat. So I just started experimenting by growing them in my south-facing window in the living room, which is the warmest room in the house in the winter, early spring. When I usually start my tomato seeds probably end of February, early March. Sort of depends on how the season's going, but they do great. And my peppers too. They do great right there, but not everything does. So, just keep trying and don't give up, but don't also, when those things don't work out the way you had hoped, don't let that get you down either. Just remember you just learned one way that's not going to work. Do you have advice for videos on making the soil rich for gardening? I really need to learn about dirt. It can be far more simple than you might think. Number one thing, grass clippings and leaves that I get from the neighbors are what we use on our garden. And then whenever we get other types of things, like somebody last year said, here, I have all this mulch. Basically, it was all a bunch of just piled up stuff, cleanup from their trees they had taken down and chipped up. So wood chips. And they didn't want it. They were just trying to get rid of all this stuff. And so Patrick brought home like a 10-yard dump truck full of this stuff. And we still have some left that we can put on the garden this year. And free. Didn't cost us anything other than the work, And so there's a lot of things you can do for free. And then don't forget chicken manure, if you have chickens. And then kitchen scraps. Some people have compost piles or compost bins, and that's great. I mean, break it down. This is me. I say keep it as natural and simple as possible. They just get thrown directly out on the garden. Banana peels, just fling them out the door into the garden. Sometimes they get hung up in the grapevines. I'm like, oh, there's a banana peel up there. That's what we do. We just fling it out there wherever it lands. And it falls to the ground and it adds minerals to us all. That's what we do. Coming back to the garden thing and about not overwhelming yourself. And I was talking about, picking a skill or, picking something that you want to do or you think you should stock up on or maybe you do want to take that step and just start grinding your own grain. But you don't want to do the cloth wipes or you don't want to make your own skin cream. That's fine. Start where it's most important to you. And then for the garden, I say, if you're just getting into it, start with an herb. Start with a culinary herb. And here's why. Because culinary herbs have so many great medicinal benefits, but are also great for using to season your foods, to add flavor to your foods. So, your rosemary, your sage, your oregano, your basil, your thyme, you can use these in cooking. And yet they also have powerful medicinal benefits. So I say pick at least one of those and grow that first, because you can easily grow a lot of those, will do well in pots. A lot, even inside. So I think that was really kind of it. My point just being that don't take on so much, because you're being led to feel guilty that you're not doing enough. You know what's enough for you. And you have to balance that stuff out according to your lifestyle, the needs of your family, your own personal needs, maybe your health ailments, maybe you have disabilities that you have to work around. And these are the kind of things a lot of people don't even think, young, healthy people that are out there doing all their work in the garden, and they're milking their cows, and they're doing this, and they're bouncing around, and they kind of forget that there's people that don't have the physical abilities to do all the things that they can do. Maybe it is simply they're young, but they're disabled. Maybe they have some other health ailments that prevent them from being able to do that. Or maybe they have family members that have health issues that they're having to care for, and they can't afford to put that much time into doing all of these things, but they want a place to start, and they just need the encouragement to realize that it's okay to start small. It's okay to just learn one thing at a time. It's okay to just grow one thing at a time. It's okay. Never, ever feel like you are not good enough because you don't match up to this person over here or that person over there. And remember that all of these people that you're watching on YouTube, we all have our own challenges that we have to deal with. We all have issues in our garden. Sometimes things fail. Sometimes we have an animal that dies. It happens. It happens to the best of us. And it's all a part of life and learning. So love y'all. Thanks for coming. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and God bless.